The stars stretched endlessly across the black sea of space. Commander Eric sat alone in the cockpit of his ship, staring at the endless night. For weeks, the patrol mission had been silent, only static in the comms and the soft hum of the engines. But tonight, something felt different, like the darkness outside was holding its breath. The radar blinked once, then twice, showing a faint signal. It was weak, almost broken, like a whisper lost in the storm. Eric leaned closer, narrowing his eyes. Drifting object detected. The system voice reported calm and cold. But this was not an asteroid and not a piece of scrap. It was alive. Through the glass, he finally saw it. A figure floating in space, turning slowly, trapped in the cold silence. The light of the distant sun caught on a silver mask covering her face. Her body was wrapped in a dark suit, torn and sparking with strange energy. For a moment, Eric thought she was already dead, just another ghost of war. But then her hand moved, weak, reaching for something unseen. His heart quickened. Humans were not supposed to survive out here, not without air, not without help. Yet here she was, alive in the emptiness. Something about her presence pulled him in. He ordered the crew to open the docking bay. "Sir, it could be a trap," one of the lieutenants warned. But Eric ignored him. Some instinct told him this was no ordinary survivor. The ship's arms pulled her inside. The chamber sealed, oxygen rushed in, and the alarms echoed through the halls. Eric rushed to her side as she collapsed into his arms. Her body was trembling, cold like ice, yet her pulse was steady. The mask on her face glowed faintly with strange lines, almost alive. The crew gathered around, but kept their distance. "Who is she?" someone whispered. No one had the answer. Eric laid her gently on the medical bed. The machines whirred, scanning her vitals. They showed human readings, but something else, something hidden beneath. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly as if reflecting the stars. She looked straight at him, and for a second, he felt she already knew his name. Her lips parted, voice weak but clear. "You should not have saved me," she whispered. Her words cut through the silence like a blade. The crew shifted nervously. "Sir, she's dangerous," another voice warned. But Eric couldn't look away. Her voice carried something strange, something heavy. It was not the sound of an enemy, nor the cry of a victim. It was a warning. He asked her name, but she only shook her head. Her gloved hand touched the mask, as if protecting it. "This must stay," she breathed. The mask's lines glowed brighter, like veins of fire running across her skin. Eric leaned closer, lowering his voice. "What are you?" he asked. Her answer was soft, almost broken. "Not what you think." Before he could ask more, the ship shook violently. Sensors screamed as something massive appeared on the radar. An unknown signal, fast, sharp, moving straight toward them. The crew shouted, scrambling to battle stations. But the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered, "They found me." Eric's chest tightened. Who were they? Why was she running? And why did it feel like bringing her on board had already sealed his fate? The ship steadied, weapons ready, but Eric's mind was trapped on her words. She was not just a survivor, not just a stranger in the void. Her presence was too precise, too heavy, too dangerous, and yet too human. As the engines roared and the alarm screamed, Eric looked down at the strange woman in his arms. Her breathing slowed, her strength fading, but her eyes never left his. In that moment, he felt she was not only fighting for herself, she was fighting for something greater, something that involved him, his crew, and maybe even Earth itself. And then, with her last breath before falling unconscious, she whispered something that made his blood run cold. "They will destroy your world unless you listen." The words echoed in his mind, heavier than the silence of space. The stars outside no longer looked peaceful. They looked like watchers, waiting, and Eric knew this was only the beginning. He had brought a mystery into his ship, and with it, the weight of a war he could not yet see. But deep inside, he also knew one thing. This woman, masked and broken, was about to change the fate of humanity. The ship's corridors echoed with tension. Alarms still flashed red, and the hum of engines filled the silence between the crew's hurried steps. But all eyes kept drifting back to the woman lying unconscious in the medical bay. No one trusted her, not even themselves. Commander Eric stood at the edge of the bed, watching the faint glow from her mask. The lines across its surface pulsed like veins, alive with some hidden energy. Every few seconds, the mask released a soft vibration, like a heartbeat that was not her own. The crew shifted nervously, their voices low and fearful. "Sir, we should put her back outside," one of the officers whispered. "She's dangerous. She's a trap. We don't even know if she's human." Eric didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked on the figure before him. The machines scanning her vitals showed human signs: a pulse, steady breathing, faint oxygen levels. But behind the normal numbers, there were strange spikes, signals no one could understand. Like something inside her was speaking in a language the machines couldn't read. He leaned closer, searching for answers in the silent rise and fall of her chest. He wanted to believe she was only a survivor, a lost traveler waiting for rescue. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. There was intent in the way she drifted through space, as if she hadn't been lost at all, but delivered. Suddenly, her body jolted. The mask flared with a blinding light, and her back arched violently against the bed. The crew gasped, some stepping backward, hands near their weapons. But before panic could break out, the light faded, and her body stilled. Her lips moved, whispering something too faint to hear. Eric bent down, his ear near her mouth. Her voice was fragile, almost breaking. "They are close," she murmured. Her words sent a chill through him, not only because of the warning, but because she said it with such certainty, like she could feel the hunters already circling outside. The ship's sensors blared again, a shrill alarm that made the walls tremble. "Incoming vessels!" shouted the lieutenant at the control deck. "They're fast, unknown origin, heading right for us." The crew rushed to stations, weapons armed, shields raised. But Eric's focus never left the woman. Somehow, she was connected to this. Her eyes flickered open again, faint light swirling inside like distant stars. She gripped Eric's arm with surprising strength. "Don't let them take me," she pleaded. Her voice cracked with both fear and defiance. "They will use me, they will use you, and then no world will survive." Eric stared at her, torn between reason and instinct. Logic screamed to lock her away, to throw her out before the danger consumed them. But something deeper told him she was the key. The way she looked at him was not the look of an enemy. It was the look of someone who carried a burden too heavy for one soul. The crew, however, were not so forgiving. One of the guards raised his weapon, his hand shaking. "She's calling them here, sir. We have to end this now." The air in the room thickened, heavy with fear and suspicion. Eric raised his hand sharply, stopping the guard. "No one touches her." His voice was firm, steady, carrying the weight of command. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their trust cracking under the strain. The woman's grip loosened as she fell back against the bed, exhausted. Her mask dimmed, the glowing lines now faint, like fading embers. But before slipping back into unconsciousness, she whispered one last phrase. "They want the mask, not me." Her words echoed in Eric's mind, twisting the mystery into deeper knots. What was this mask, this strange living shell on her face? Why did it pulse with energy like a second heart? And why did it feel as though it was watching him as much as he was watching it? The ship rattled again as enemy fire grazed their shields. The battle had begun, and they were caught in the storm. But in the heart of that chaos, Eric made his choice. He would not abandon her, not yet, because every instinct told him that she was more than a threat. She was a secret waiting to be revealed, a secret worth risking everything for. He tightened his grip on the edge of the bed and whispered under his breath, Whoever you are, you're staying alive. Outside, the stars burned brighter as enemy ships closed in. Inside, the crew prepared for a fight they did not understand. And at the center of it all, hidden behind a glowing mask, a woman held the truth that could decide the fate of worlds. The ship's shields groaned as enemy fire struck again. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms howled, and the crew shouted over one another. But in the medical bay, silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the mask. Commander Eric's mind was torn in two. One side demanded he think of the battle, his ship, his crew. The other side dragged his eyes back to the strange woman lying weak and pale before him. Her words haunted him. They want the mask, not me. The door slid open with a hiss. Lieutenant Kale stepped inside, his uniform smudged with smoke. Sir, shields won't hold. We need orders, he said sharply. But then his gaze flicked to the woman, and his jaw tightened. She's the reason they're here. Get rid of her, and maybe they'll leave us. Eric's voice was steel. No. The word silenced the room, heavy and final. Kale clenched his fists, but he didn't argue. He knew better than to challenge the commander in front of the crew, but his eyes said what his mouth did not. This choice would tear them apart. Suddenly, the woman stirred. Her breathing grew faster, and the mask glowed brighter. Her lips moved, words spilling out like broken glass. They will not stop, she whispered. They will burn your skies, crush your oceans, until nothing is left. Eric leaned closer, desperate for answers. Who are they? He demanded. Why do they want you? Her hands trembled as they clutched at the sheets. Her voice cracked, torn between fear and fury. They are the architects, she said. They build empires on the bones of worlds. They do not forgive, and they do not forget. The crew froze, every ear straining to catch her words. Even Kale's anger faltered, replaced by something colder, dread. Architects, he muttered, the name tasting like poison. Those are myths, stories told to scare cadets. Her eyes snapped open, glowing faintly under the mask. Not myths, she hissed. I was made by them. I was their creation, but I escaped. The room seemed to shrink, the air pressing heavy on every chest. Eric felt his throat tighten. If what she said was true, then humanity was standing on the edge of something far bigger than war. Something ancient, relentless, and patient. The ship shook again, lights flickered, and Kale cursed under his breath. We don't have time for riddles, he snapped. Either she talks, or we throw her out before those monsters tear us apart. The woman's weak laughter echoed through the bay, sharp and unsettling. You think throwing me out will save you? She whispered. No. They've already marked you. You can't run. You can't hide. Not anymore. The words chilled even the hardest soldiers. Some lowered their weapons. Others looked at the floor. Because deep down, they knew she was right. The enemy had found them, and nothing would erase that mark. Eric stepped closer, his voice firm but low. Then tell me why they want the mask. Tell me why you beg me not to take it off. Her fingers brushed the surface of the glowing mask. Her breathing shallow, her body weak, but her will unbroken. This mask is not protection, she whispered. It is a prison. The room fell silent, every heart pounding in fear. A prison, Eric repeated, her head tilted slowly, her eyes glinting behind the silver shell. They locked what I am inside it. They feared me, feared what I might become, and so they caged me with their own design. Her voice cracked, but her words carried the weight of truth. If you remove it before the time is right, you will unleash more than you can control. Eric's chest tightened, the decision pressing on him like a storm. Save her, trust her, risk everything. Or end it here, destroy the mask, and hope the architects would follow the wreckage instead. The ship rattled harder, a deep rumble tearing through the hull. The crew scrambled, shouting updates. Enemy boarding pods incoming. They're cutting through the lower decks. We can't hold much longer. But Eric's focus was locked on her face. The crew wanted orders, the ship wanted saving. But his gut told him this woman was the true battlefield. Not the enemy outside, but the mystery she carried. Her hand shot out again, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her voice, weak but sharp, cut through the chaos. "Listen to me, Commander," she begged. "You must survive, no matter what happens to me, because only you can see what's coming." The mask pulsed once more, a strange hum filling the air. And then, as the first explosion shook the ship from the boarding assault, she collapsed again, falling into silence. Her warning left hanging in the smoke-filled room. The architects were real, and they were here. The ship trembled under the weight of battle. Metal groaned, alarms screamed, and the corridors filled with smoke. Enemy boarding pods cut into the lower decks, their claws ripping into steel like teeth. The crew braced themselves, rifles ready, eyes wide with fear. Commander Eric moved through the chaos with steady steps. But inside, his thoughts burned with a woman's warning. The architects were not myths, not legends. They were real, and now their hunters were inside his ship. "Sir, they've breached Section 7, Kale shouted over the comms. "They're moving fast. We need to fall back." Eric's jaw tightened. If they retreated, the crew would be cornered. But if they fought head-on, they would lose. Because these weren't just soldiers. They were hunters built by the same force that had made her. Eric glanced toward the medbay, where the masked woman lay, her body motionless, her presence heavy. He felt as if the entire battle revolved around her. If she fell into enemy hands, everything would end. The walls shook as another pod slammed into the hull. The sound of metal cutting, sparks flying, boots pounding on steel. The enemy was inside. Shadowy figures stepped from the breach, tall, armored, moving with eerie precision. Their eyes glowed with the same faint light that pulsed on her mask. The crew opened fire, but the bullets sparked harmlessly against their armor. The hunters marched forward, silent and unshaken. Eric drew his sidearm, firing at their heads. One stumbled, slowed, but did not fall. "They're not soldiers," he muttered under his breath. "They're machines." Kale's voice shouted again over the comms. "Sir, if we don't leave this sector, they'll tear the ship apart." Eric looked back at the woman one last time. Then he made the choice. "We run," he ordered, "but we don't leave her behind." The crew dragged the woman from the medbay, her body weak but still breathing. The glowing mask dimmed and brightened with every step, as if responding to the danger. The hunters turned their heads, locking onto her like wolves to prey. Their pace quickened, metal feet pounding in perfect rhythm. The ship became a maze of fire and screams, every corridor echoing with the chase. Eric led them down the narrow halls, turning sharp corners. Doors slammed shut behind them, buying seconds, never minutes. Everywhere they ran, the hunters followed, relentless, unhurried, certain of their victory. At one point, a young crewman stumbled. Before Eric could turn back, one of the hunters raised a glowing blade. The boy's scream cut through the smoke, but the masked woman stirred suddenly. Her voice broke through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Stop!" The hunter froze mid-strike, its blade inches from the boy's chest. The glow in its eyes flickered, fighting against something unseen. Then, as if struck by an invisible force, it staggered back, retreating into the shadows. The crew looked at her in shock. She was still half-conscious, her body limp in their arms. But her words had reached the machine like chains. Eric stared at her, his mind racing. She wasn't just hunted by them. She had power over them. "Move," he ordered, shaking off the moment. The crew sprinted through the emergency corridors, the woman carried between them. But the hunters regrouped, more of them spilling from the breaches, their glowing eyes cutting through the smoke like cold fire. The ship's engines roared as Kale fought to maneuver through the battlefield outside. Enemy vessels swarmed like vultures, boxing them in. Every route closed, every exit sealed. And in the center of it all, the hunters closed the distance, step by step. "They won't stop," Eric muttered, gripping his weapon tighter. "They don't need to." the woman whispered weakly. Her voice was faint, but her words carried weight. "They're not chasing you. Commander, they're chasing me." The crew's fear turned to anger. Some glared at her, their voices sharp and broken. "She's the reason we're dying," one shouted. "Throw her to them, and maybe they'll let us live." Eric stopped, his eyes hard as steel. "No," he said, his voice steady. "They won't stop if we give her up. They'll never stop because this is bigger than us." For a moment, silence held the corridor. Even the crew knew he was right. The hunters were not after victory, they were after control. And control never ends with one sacrifice. The chase pressed on, every step heavier than the last. Finally, they reached the escape hangar, the last line of survival. But even there, the hunters were waiting, rows of glowing eyes in the smoke, standing between them and freedom. The woman lifted her head, her voice breaking as she spoke. "There is only one way out," she whispered. "You must trust me." Her words hung in the air like a blade. The crew shifted uneasily, torn between doubt and desperation. Eric met her gaze. Her eyes burned faintly behind the mask, tired but unbroken. And in that instant, he made his choice. "Then show us," he said, his voice low but firm. "Show us how to escape." The hangar was filled with fire and shadows. Hunters stood in rows, their glowing eyes locked on the woman. The crew froze, weapons raised, but their hands shook. They all knew they couldn't win this fight. Commander, Eric stepped forward, his body shielding her weak form. Her mask glowed brighter now, pulsing with every heartbeat. The machines did not attack, not yet. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for her. The silence was crushing. Every breath, every second stretched into eternity. Finally, when the hunters spoke, its voice deep and mechanical. "Return what is ours," it said. Its words echoed in the hangar, cold and final. The crew shifted nervously, glancing between Eric and the woman. They wanted answers, they wanted a way out. But the only one who held the truth was the one lying broken in his arms. The woman stirred, her voice weak but sharp. "They don't want me," she whispered. "They want the mask." Eric's grip tightened on her shoulder. "What is it?" he asked. "What are you hiding from us?" Her hands shook as they reached for her own face. Her fingers brushed the silver mask, tracing the glowing lines. Her voice trembled, but her words cut deep. "It's not a shield," she said. "It's a lock, a cage, to keep me contained." The crew gasped. Cale stepped forward, his face pale. "A cage? Then what happens if it's removed?" Her eyes flickered behind the mask. "They feared me," she whispered. "They built me to destroy, but I broke free, and so they locked me inside this prison." Her breath caught, and her voice cracked. "If you take it off before I am ready, you may not survive what comes out." Eric felt the weight of her words pressing against his chest. Every instinct screamed that this was the moment, the choice that would change everything. The hunters stepped closer, slow and steady. Their weapons glowed, but they did not fire. They were waiting, watching. They wanted him to break. They wanted him to take the mask. Cale's voice cut through the smoke, sharp and angry. "She's tricking us, Commander. She's one of them. Look at them. They don't attack because she controls them." He raised his weapon toward her. "End it now before it's too late." The crew tensed, some siding with Cale, others frozen with doubt. The air crackled with fear, with betrayal. Eric stood in the center, torn apart. The woman's breathing grew weaker, her pulse fading beneath his hands. And then, her voice came again, softer, more human than ever. "Eric, please," she whispered. "If you want to know who I am, if you want to know why I ran from them, take it off. Take off the mask, and you'll finally see me." His heart pounded in his chest. The words echoed like a knife in the silence. "Take it off. See me." The crew shouted in protest. "Don't do it," Cale barked. "She'll kill us all." Others begged. "She might save us. She might be telling the truth." "Commander, decide now." The hunters stepped forward again, their eyes burning brighter. The hangar walls shook as the ship groaned under fire. Time was running out. And Eric was trapped between two choices: trust her or trust his fear. He reached for the mask, his fingers trembling. The silver surface was warm, pulsing like it was alive. The glow intensified as if sensing his touch. The hunters froze mid-step, their heads tilting in unison. The crew held their breath, the air thick with dread. Her hand rose weakly, covering his. Her voice broke, fragile yet certain. "You'll know the truth, but once it's done, there is no going back." For a heartbeat, the hangar was silent. No weapons fired, no engines roared. Only the sound of his breath, hers, and the pulsing glow of the mask. Then the ship lurched violently, another explosion tearing through the hull. The hunters advanced again, weapons raised. The crew screamed for orders, desperate for action. But Eric's mind was trapped on her words. The truth was there, right in his hands. All he had to do was pull. His fingers tightened on the mask. The silver surface rippled like water, bending under his grip. And for the first time, a crack appeared. A faint line splitting across the mask, glowing brighter, burning hotter. The woman gasped, her body convulsing as if something inside her was fighting to break free. The hunters stopped, their weapons lowered. They bowed their heads in eerie unison. Not to him, but to her, as if they were worshiping what was about to emerge. The crew recoiled in fear. Some shouted for him to stop. Others urged him to continue. But Eric's heart had already chosen. He pulled harder. The mask split further, the glow spilling out like fire. The woman's scream filled the hangar, a sound of both pain and release. The hunters roared in response, their voices metallic and terrible. And as the mask cracked wider, Eric finally understood. This was not about saving her. This was about unleashing what she truly was. The mask cracked open with a blinding flash. Light poured into the hangar like fire spilling across metal. The crew shielded their eyes, some falling to the floor in terror. Even the hunters paused, their glowing weapons dimming as if bowing to the force inside her. Commander Eric held his ground. The silver shell splintered in his hands, pieces breaking away like glass. Each fragment dissolved into sparks before it touched the floor. And beneath it, her true face slowly came into view. At first, it looked human, her skin pale, her lips trembling with pain, her eyes shut tight as if afraid to open. But then the glow spread across her veins, thin lines of light pulsing beneath her skin like living fire. She gasped, and when her eyes finally opened, they burned with both human warmth and alien brilliance. A storm of stars lived inside them. The crew recoiled, some whispering in horror. "She's not human," one muttered. "She's one of them." Another spat, but Eric couldn't look away. Because even in that glow, even in the strange patterns now etched into her skin, he saw something familiar, something painfully human. The woman sat upright, her body trembling, but her voice, though weak, carried the weight of two worlds. "I was born human," she said, "but they changed me." Her words silenced the room. The hunters stood frozen, their heads bowed lower. The crew gripped their weapons tighter, fear choking them. And Eric finally spoke, his voice low. "Changed you how?" Her hands trembled as she lifted them, showing the glowing veins beneath her skin. "I was taken as a child, stolen from Earth," she whispered. "They broke me, rebuilt me, piece by piece, until I was not theirs and not yours." Tears welled in her eyes, cutting through the glow. "They call me a weapon, a key to end humanity, but I chose not to serve." The silence cracked with Cale's voice, sharp and bitter. "Lies," he snapped. "You're a spy, a machine in disguise. That's all you are." He raised his weapon, but Eric stepped in front of her. "Stand down," he ordered. His voice was calm, but unshakable. Cale's hands shook with rage. "Sir, she's not human anymore. Look at her." But Eric's gaze never left her face. Her glowing eyes, though otherworldly, carried sorrow, fear, and hope. Things no machine could fake. She looked at Eric, her voice breaking as she spoke. They will come for me again. They will come for Earth, because I am proof that humans can resist them. Her breathing quickened. They wanted to erase me, to erase everything human in me, but I held on. She placed her hand on her chest, the glow burning brighter. My heart is still mine. It still beats for your people. The hunters stirred, stepping forward in unison. But instead of attacking, they dropped to their knees. Their voices rang out in one terrible sound. All hail the hybrid. The crew froze, fear sinking into their bones. Hybrid. The word twisted through the air like a curse. Kale's face paled, his weapon lowering. You're their queen, he whispered. But she shook her head fiercely, her voice sharp. No, I am their mistake. The hunters raised their heads, eyes burning brighter. They did not see her as a mistake. They saw her as command. Her very presence bent them. Her voice chained them. And that terrified her more than it terrified anyone else. Eric stepped closer, his voice calm but demanding. Then what are you? Her eyes met his, glowing like twin suns. I am both, she whispered. I am human, and I am them, but I chose to be human. The words struck deep, because in that moment, everyone in the hangar understood. She was not only a weapon, not only an enemy, she was a living choice. Proof that humanity was more than flesh. It was will, it was spirit, it was the power to choose. The ship shuddered violently, enemy cannons ripping through its shields. The hunters turned their heads, awaiting her command. The crew stared at her, torn between fear and hope. And Eric realized the truth. Her mask had not been to protect her from them. It had been to protect the universe from her. But now the mask was gone, and the universe would never be the same. Her eyes burned brighter, her voice rising with new strength. They will not stop, but neither will I. She stood, her body glowing with a light that shook the walls. The hunters bowed deeper, their voices rising again. All hail the hybrid. The crew flinched, their hands on their weapons. But Eric raised his arm, steady and calm. Not a hybrid, he said firmly. She's more than that. The woman looked at him, her eyes softening for the first time. Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. And in that smile, Eric saw what she had been fighting to keep alive all along. Her humanity. The ship burned. Metal twisted. Sparks fell. The floor shook under the weight of battle. Outside the windows, enemy fleets circled like vultures around a dying beast. Every second pushed them closer to destruction. The hunters in the hangar stayed bowed, their glowing eyes fixed on her. The hybrid, the mistake that chose to be human. She stood among them, glowing brighter than the fire tearing through the ship. Commander Eric's heart pounded. He knew this moment was more than survival. It was history itself. One choice would decide if humanity's flame was crushed or carried forward. The crew looked at her with terror and hope. Some still saw an enemy. Some saw salvation. But all of them waited for her word. Because the battlefield no longer belonged to soldiers or cannons. It belonged to her. Her voice rose above the chaos, steady though her body trembled. They came for me, she said. They will never stop. Not while I breathe. Not while I exist. Her glowing eyes scanned the room, pausing on every fearful face. They don't fear your weapons, your ships, your armies. They fear your spirit, your will to fight, and I carry that spirit inside me. Eric stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. There must be another way, he said. You don't have to give yourself up. Her smile was small, fragile, but filled with warmth. Eric, if I stay, they will never stop chasing you, she whispered. If I fight, they will burn every world to dust just to take me back. Her voice broke, but she forced the words. The only way to end this is to take the choice away from them. The crew shook their heads, protests breaking out. You can't, one cried. There has to be another way. Another shouted. But deep down, they all knew the truth. Some battles could only be won with sacrifice. The hunters stirred, their voices rising in unison. All hail the hybrid, return to us, return to the architects. But she turned on them, her glow burning hotter. No, she said fiercely, I'm not yours. I never was, I never will be. The hunters staggered back, their connection cracking under her will. Some fell to their knees, others sparked and collapsed. Her humanity broke their chains. And for the first time, they feared her. She turned back to Eric, her eyes soft. Her glowing hand touched his cheek, warm and alive. Do you see me now? She asked quietly. His voice caught, his throat tight. Yes, he whispered. You're more human than any of us. Her smile trembled as her glow brightened. This is who I am, she said, and this is how I will fight for you. Before he could stop her, she stepped forward into the center of the hangar, her body blazing with light. The hunters screamed, their voices metallic and broken. The enemy ships outside turned their cannons, desperate to stop her. But she raised her arms, and the glow consumed everything. The crew shielded their eyes as a wave of energy ripped through the ship. The hunters dissolved into sparks, their armor crumbling like ash. The enemy fleet outside shook violently, ships tearing apart under the force. One by one, they broke, shattered, destroyed, until the silence of space returned. The glow faded, leaving only her figure, kneeling, trembling, her strength gone. Eric rushed forward, catching her before she collapsed. Her body felt lighter, weaker, like it was slipping away. Her voice was faint, a whisper in his arms. Now, they can't use me, she breathed. They can't use you. Her glowing eyes dimmed, but her human smile stayed. Promise me, Eric, promise me you'll fight for them. Promise me you'll fight for Earth. Tears stung his eyes. He gripped her hand tightly. I promise, he said, his voice breaking. I'll fight for you, for all of us. She exhaled one final time, her glow fading into silence. Her body stilled, slipping away in his arms. But her smile lingered, the last trace of her humanity. The hangar was quiet. The crew stood frozen, their weapons lowered, their eyes wet with sorrow. They had not only lost a stranger, they had lost a hero. Eric carried her gently, laying her down as if she were royalty. He stood tall, his voice steady though his heart was shattered. She wasn't one of us, he said, but she was more human than anyone I've ever known. The crew bowed their heads, and in the silence, they knew her sacrifice had bought them not just survival, but hope. Eric turned to the stars. The scars of battle still burned across the sky, but somewhere in that endless night, he felt her presence, watching, guiding, reminding him of his promise. And as the engines roared to life and the ship limped away from the wreckage, Commander Eric whispered to the stars, "You'll never be forgotten.